Hi everyone, I wanted to take a few moments to talk about context. And I'm going to talk about this in the scope of the Machiavellian analysis paper that you're writing, but I think this is something that would be helpful really with any of the essays that you write, especially for AP US history. So, providing context. When I started reading the first two paragraphs of your Prince analysis, I noticed that many of you are leaving out essential details in regards to the shows or the movies or the books that you've chosen to analyze. Even those who are writing responses to the articles that you read, you still need to provide some level of context. So, what is context? Context is necessary background information. In another word, I guess you could replace necessary with relevant, but I think both fit. So this is background information that is relevant to your argument that will help the reader understand where you're coming from. It is essential to making your argument. The more you leave your reader in the dark, the less that they are likely to be on your side, the less likely they are to understand what you're trying to say. And remember, especially at the AP level, at the college level too, the writer has to be the one doing the work, not the reader. So I want to use this example. This is not an exact example of what I saw, but after reading a lot of the first two paragraphs of your essay, I thought it would be helpful to create an amalgamation, which is just a combination of some of the issues that I saw. So this is similar to what I've seen. Since the writing of the Prince, it has often been asked, is it better to be feared or loved when it comes to those in power? A great example of achieving power by fear is Walter White, who uses Machiavellian tactics to achieve what he wants. Now, there are quite a few problems with this, and this isn't just because it's very short. You may hear English teachers say, this is a very short introduction. I know I say that before, but it's missing a lot of information that will help your reader. And short introductions do that. They leave out a lot of context, and you have to make it clear to the reader, not only that so they understand the point you're trying to make, but you also want to show that you fully understand what you're talking about. So, first and foremost, let's look at that first sentence. It says the writing of the Prince. Okay, there have been plenty of books titled The Prince. Which one is it? Is it Machiavelli's The Prince? Is it I don't know, a romance novel, a fantasy novel? We don't know. So the reader is left to figure it out, and you don't want to do that. Don't leave them to have to do guesswork. Um, and then, is it better to be feared or loved when it comes to those in power? I think that could use a little bit more context. Go to the next sentence. A great example of achieving power by fear is Walter White, who uses Machiavellian tactics to achieve what he wants. Now, who is Walter White? Okay, I think that's the next big question we ask. Who exactly is Walter White? What Machiavellian tactics does he use? Yeah, I said that right. Sorry. What Machiavellian tactics does he use? Achieve what he wants. What does he want? There are way too many questions that I, the reader, am asking. And you could say, well, I'll explore that later in the essay. If you're already establishing confusion in the beginning to where I'm like, who's Walter White? Like, don't leave me to guess. You can still provide, like I said, relevant, rather shortened context. You don't have to explain everything about Walter White or the show that he's from, but you do need more information. So I went ahead and expanded it. So this keeps the same ideas that original introduction was going for, but it leaves nothing to the imagination. It doesn't leave the reader questioning who this is or how they connect or anything like that. So I'll go ahead and read this real quick. Since the writing of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince, it has been considered by many to be a guidebook on keeping and maintaining power. Although it was written during the Renaissance, its ideas are still relevant today. In fact, many modern writers use Machiavellian principles when establishing fictional characters in film, television, and novels. A great example of this is Walter White, the protagonist from the show Breaking Bad, which involves White, a former chemist and current chemistry teacher, producing methamphetamine in order to pay for his cancer treatment. He is forced to make decisions that see him intimidating, extorting, and ultimately murdering those who stand in his way, proving Machiavelli's well-known idea that it is better to be feared than loved. So now we know who Walter White is. We know what show he's from. We know what the show is about. We know which version of the prince we're talking about. And I still incorporate the idea of the question from earlier. Is it better to be feared or loved? I just turned it to a statement and put it at the end. Also notice that I have a thesis statement. I am arguing that he makes decisions that prove Machiavelli's idea that it is better to be feared than loved. That is the thesis of this paper. That is what I am trying to basically argue or prove. So I've got a thesis, I've got context, and I've got voice. I have enough sentence variety in here. I play with punctuation a little bit. You'll notice that I have an em dash over here, and then I also have an em dash phrase right here. And so it gives a rhythm to what I'm trying to say. But I have given you all the information you need to set up where my argument is going. Okay? I say that he intimidates, extorts, and murders people. So those are the examples I can use. Paragraph 1 could be me talking about who he intimidates, why he does it, and how it proves that Machiavelli was correct. The next one, I could provide a paragraph that tells you how he extorts people, and again, proves that Machiavelli was correct. So this is essentially what I'm looking for, not just on the critical analysis for Machiavelli, but this would be a good framework to use for other essays. Like I said, context is important. Don't assume your reader knows, okay? Even though your reader, who is, me, even though, yeah, I'm pretty educated, I'm still going to be looking for context. Always assume that your audience or your reader is the academic skeptic, okay? And this is for really any paper you write in school, papers you write in college. What I mean by assuming your audience is the academic skeptic is they are intelligent, they are educated, they are well-read, but they are skeptical of your position, meaning you have to prove to them that you are correct. So although, yeah, I know what Breaking Bad is, and yeah, I know who Walter White is, and I know what The Prince is about. I've read it multiple times. I've written papers on it. But more importantly, if you're trying to make an argument, you're providing context to me, even though these are things that I already know, you're providing context that shows me that you understand, okay? So keep that in mind. Your audience, if you don't know who your audience is, or if your audience is just your teacher, assume it is the academic skeptic, someone who is smart but skeptical. And going back to earlier, when we talk about what kind of context and what kind of information to include, context is relevant information. For instance, if you're writing a paper about Abraham Lincoln, you don't have to say that he was the 16th president as context. First off, knowing that he was the 16th as opposed to the 15th or the 17th really isn't relevant to really any argument. Because him being number 16 on a list doesn't really have much to do with the things he did as a president, other than, of course, maybe saying that, well, he was president after so-and-so, and so he had all these things he had to do or issues he had to clean up or whatever it may be. But knowing his order in line of presidents is irrelevant to most arguments about him. And most American academics, heck, most Americans are aware of the works and legacy of Lincoln. So you don't have to tell the academic skeptic that Abraham Lincoln, signed the Emancipation Proclamation, or that, Abraham Lincoln was president during the Civil War. You don't have to necessarily say those things. Now, if there's a bit of information that is relevant to your argument that people may not necessarily be aware of, yeah, you could include it. Maybe his position on a lesser known bill. And even then you could just do that as a quick phrase off to the side. So hopefully this helps. We spent a few days talking about context, and if I'm going to be honest, on the first day it didn't quite work like I wanted it to. But you know what? We figure it out. We learn as we go along. And like I said, hopefully this helps. Message me with questions. Have a good one.